I think we lost him.
Stupid dragon. Hi, and welcome to our first episode, giving you some basic information about Dungeons & Dragons. Now, Dungeons & Dragons is considered a tabletop game, and that means, as it sounds, the entire game can be played on a table. It's also considered an RPG, or role-playing game. That means that the players create imaginary alter egos to project themselves into the game. The game was created in 1974 by a duo named Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Legend had it that Arneson and Gygax were tired of playing standard miniature war games and thought it'd be cool to develop actual background stories for the little table pieces. Sort of like giving a stormtrooper a wife and family after a hard day at the Death Star type vibe. So they wrote up rules, fleshed out a game, and published it under a company they called TSR, or Tactical Studies Rules. And D&D was born. Over the years, the company went through some ups and downs, and eventually Gygax went off on his own, fully fleshed out the rules, expanded them, added to them, and rebranded the entire venture to its current incarnation, which is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And it's arguably known as the game that started modern role-playing games, and an entire industry has been built up around it. Alright, and let's get back to the game. So the game starts with a player creating a character. Now, what a character is, it's an imaginary being that the player creates. They flesh this person, creature, out with a background and complete it with skills and abilities. The characters could be of different races. They could be dwarves, they could be elves, any type of fantasy type situation. They may rely on magic, be magic users. They may rely on swords and shields. They may be characters that heal other players. The creation is limited only by the player's imagination and what they want to achieve in the game. Once the player is happy with his or her character, he or she joins the other players at the table or across computer screens to begin the session. Now, usually the game consists of 3 to 5 players and a DM or a dungeon master. The dungeon master, that's the head honcho. He or she is the person that's created the world and runs the adventure quests that the players are about to embark on. The DM, using a combination of rules and imagination, controls the parameters of the game, keeps the players in line and on track, and keeps things fun while keeping the players engaged and thinking. If a player wants to juggle bananas while balancing on a beach ball and escaping from a dragon, well, it's the DM that's going to figure all that out. And how does he or she figure it out? Well, in D&D, there's a few things that mesh, but it's all based on mathematics, percentiles, and chance. If a player attempts to perform an attack, as example, there's a number of calculations required. How skilled are they in the weapon they're using? What's the counter effect of the enemy's armor? Does the enemy dodge or meet the attack? Numbers for all these are crunched by the DM, and the player is given a final percentage chance to succeed. He or she then breaks out the polyhedral dice and rolls the required dice for the tasks at hand. The overall success or failure is determined by the rolls. The game continues along these lines, with players cooperating to achieve their goals while the dungeon master manipulates the world around them. It ends at the conclusion of the quest or the loss of the party if they're not in sync with each other or if they're rolling terrible numbers on the dice. The world of D&D itself is based on a cornucopia of mythology, history, pulp fiction, and fantasy. And the game itself's had its highs and lows through the years. The monsters in D&D are based on religions and mythologies, and in the 70s and 80s, they were targeted by religious groups for alleged promotion of devil worship, witchcraft, and suicide, just as the music industry was suffering from the same critiques. The accusations were pretty unfounded. Connections of Baal Satanism and D&D were refuted, and research by psychologists concluded there were no harmful effects of playing D&D. And as a matter of fact, the psychologists found quite the opposite. They found that D&D was cited as encouraging socialization, problem-solving skills, interaction, and led to positive moral decision-making in the future. Per TSR itself and Gygax's legacy, they were facing bankruptcy in 1997. They were picked up by a company called Wizards of the Coast, which continued publication and publishes all the books today. Since its creation, there's been 5 editions of Dungeons & Dragons throughout the years, current edition being the 5e edition. And with the current popularity of role-playing games and fantasy, bolstered by shows such as The Big Bang Theory and Stranger Things, D&D is now as popular as ever. So there you have it. Basic, probably and concise, definitely played down brief history of the daddy of all role-playing games. Hope you enjoyed. Welcome aboard, and please consider subscribing.